I was struck once. But they were thrown with love, so thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight, I'm going to make a really soapy bath, put all my little rubber duckies in there, and read all these.
Yeah. Anything for you.
So, as you're finishing up those little extraordinary notes, just a couple things. One, I am talking to the people who are going to boost the ACT score for the junior class.
Too much pressure.
Upon your shoulders, the future of our success rests. Bring up the curve, right?
If we get an average of 21 plus, we get a field trip.
Is that right?
Yeah, we can guarantee a field trip from Bellman.
You're saying you're getting them.
We get a field trip whenever you use that for our lecture.
Yeah, Mom.
Yep, that'll be a May thing. Yeah. And then number 2. So I'm talking about your paper now. That's due Friday. Some of you still don't quite understand. So let me say again.
Wait, it's due Friday or Thursday?
Friday.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, Friday. If you're leaving early, that's okay. You'll have access to technology. Submit it on Classroom, or share it with me, or email it to me, or print it, give it to me, whatever. But what I would do if I were you, if you are starting at square one, is travel back in time and fix it. But currently, that's not possible. So instead, let's just think about what you could do. You're writing a regular 6-paragraph essay. Was the United States justified in acquiring an overseas empire? Hofstadter and Lefebvre are not part of the equation yet. They will be, but they're not yet. Think about your opinion on it. Regular 6-paragraph paper. 2 arguments for the side you disagree with, which you prove with document evidence and acknowledge that might have some validity with historical evidence, and then you refute it with historical evidence and your own analysis. Thank you. You've done it a million times before. Do it again. And then that's paragraphs 2 and 3. Paragraphs 4 and 5. Thanks. Paragraphs 4 and 5 are where you are arguing the side you agree with. Why or why not? Document evidence. And remember, this time the document evidence is actually quoted. You are actually quoting this time. Prove it with historical evidence and analysis. No need for synthesis in this paper. It went a long way.
We're not synthesizing?
You don't need to synthesize. If you want, I think that's fine, but I'm not requiring it. Okay? And then conclusion. So regular 6-paragraph paper. Hofstadter and Lefebvre are not part of the equation yet. Just write this bad boy. And then take one of those paragraphs from Hofstadter and Lefebvre and just put the paragraph somewhere in your paper that makes logical sense. To me, it makes sense that you put it in the part of your paper that is arguing the U.S. States was justified. Whether you agree with it or not, I would put your Hofstadter or Lefebvre. Remember what I said is or, not and, or. Put it in that part of your paper arguing that the U.S. was justified as an acknowledgement that this is why the U.S. did what they did. Okay? That makes your 6-paragraph paper into a into a 7-paragraph paper, which is totally fine.
How many paragraphs should it be?
Okay.
Stop pulling them.
Okay. Look at what you taught us. I wrote these on paper, and I wrote
Okay.
historical example.
So I realized that as I was talking, maybe half of you are listening. Please do listen now as what I'm about to say. Okay. There is no need for you to mention your historian in your intro or your conclusion. You don't have to. I mean, you can, but I'm trying to make this easier for you. Just write a regular 6-paragraph essay with the prompt, was the U.S. justified in acquiring an overseas empire? And then stick another paragraph in there. One of the people who was not listening at all as I was talking this morning for 5 minutes.
Awkward.
That's fine too. Okay. I'm hoping this is the last time. Are there any questions about your paper?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask about what's up.
So do we quote the historians or
Do it midnight, right?
we don't quote the documents that
Yes, you do.
We quote both of them. We have 2 quotes in 1 paragraph. Yeah, and one of them.
Why would you have 2 quotes in one paragraph?
Because if you add the historian.
Oh, if you make that part of that paragraph. I was just saying you could make it its own paragraph.
But to start, we don't quote from them. We quote from the documents he gave us.
So,
I don't have like the historians in any of mine yet.
so those of you who are listening, how many quotes should be in this paper that's due Friday?
That's what you wrote.
5. 5. Unless you quote from both historians.
Oh, so 4 from the documents and then 1 from the. Yeah, I got that.
Oh, I got it. Got it.
Your job is to make sure everything is a note to me. Okay, now, strange week. I'm not seeing you tomorrow. I'm not seeing you Wednesday. Well, I'll see some of you Wednesday. Because you're all taking the work keys, and the oddity of the schedule means that I won't necessarily see all of you on Wednesday. So Wednesday, if I do see you, would probably be just kind of a work day for those of you who are lucky enough to have class that day.
Do we get to see that schedule?
I'm telling you.
Oh,
I don't know how the work keys works. And then Thursday is the day before the paper's due. I don't want to cover too much there either. What I'm telling you is that today and Friday are your 2 normal class schedules, at least for this class, which means I want to cover a bit, which means that the silliness that I've seen displayed last Friday and today, can you just suspend it for a little while? I'm not looking at that table for any particular reason, except those are the people that I especially want to hear this message. It's random, though. What's up?
When is the paper due?
Friday, 3:10. I have spring break, too. I think I'm going to be taking these with me as I'm sitting on a beach.
Where are you going?
Hawaii.
Where am I going? I'm going to Menards to fix my bathrooms.
When are you going to Hawaii?
Summer.
Oh, I didn't.
All right. So here we go. I'm just warning you in advance. I'm trying to cover a lot today. Okay?
So can you guys?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. If this arrangement, Logan, doesn't work, then fix it.
Got it.
But do you really got it?
Yes, I do got it.
There you go. Kind of looks like Christmas.
Today,
Having a party.
we're talking about World War I. The prior unit had as one of its topics American Empire. And I tried to get the message across, and I think I did, that we were competing with other European nations for empire. And we're competing in areas like Asia, but those other European nations were competing in the Middle East and in Africa and in as well as competing with us in Asia. World War I was the settling of those competitions. It is sort of the end of a story which began when Columbus decided to go that way. When Columbus decided to go that way, that started the age of empires, European nations competing with each other for foreign markets and foreign raw materials and foreign empires. World War I would be the final battle. In this class, do you remember the French and Indian War, Queen Anne's War, King Edward's War, to a certain extent, the American Revolutionary War, to a certain extent, the American War of 1812. Those are all European wars over empire. World War I was the last one, the biggie. This is it. You and me, Atlantic City, let's go. So I'm fairly certain that most of you in here are aware that some guy got shot, which began World War I. Franz Ferdinand. Who's Franz Ferdinand?
Archduke of.
Very good. He's the heir to the throne. I wish I didn't have that glass thing there, but underneath this exploding thing is a thing called Austria-Hungary. In it are Austria and Hungary and a couple other things, which is important to the story. An empire is when this group of people rules this group of people, but this group of people doesn't want to be ruled by this group of people. That's what an empire is. Okay. Very good. So this Archduke gets shot. And by the way, if you ever want to learn a fascinating story, read about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It was one F up after another, and then they got lucky. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand is on the way to some hospital to shake hands and kiss babies with soldiers. And there was this plot to assassinate him, but he never went by where he was supposed to go by. So the assassins are like, frick, well, let's go home. One guy gets a little hungry, stops by a little shop, has a little coffee, and there goes by the Archduke as he's sipping his coffee. He's like, I'll be right back. Goes, shoots the guy, shoots his wife, and there we go. Yes, I get the hands on the face thing. Okay. Anyway. Oh, absolutely. But do know this. This is something that is noteworthy. That in Austria-Hungary, not only is there Austria and Hungary, but there's something else called Bosnia. Bosnia. Okay? Bosnia is in Austria-Hungary. Was. Not in Austria-Hungary is a thing called Serbia. So in my left hand is the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Austria, Hungary, Bosnia. Not in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but really close to it, right next to it is a thing called Serbia. Serbians and Bosnians are cousins, ethnically, right? They're both sort of part of the same group of people. These people called Slavs. Not Slavs, Slavs with a V. Slavic. They're both Slavic. Serbians considered Bosnians their cousins, their brothers. And Serbia did not want Bosnia to be in Austria-Hungary. So they shot the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. A Serbian shot the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary to try and rescue their fellow Bosnians to get him out of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's the trigger event. Please, for the rest of your lives, do not argue that the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was a cause of World War I. No, it wasn't. It was a trigger event. But what made up the powder keg, right? If that's the spark, there must have been long-term, decades-old, simmering actual causes of World War I, which would ignite because of this trigger event. I'm wondering if any of you know. One you should know for sure. So we just were talking about it like 5 minutes ago.
Empires.
Very good. Battle over empire. Imperialism, right? Britain had an empire. Germany had an empire. Austria-Hungary had an empire. The Ottoman Empire. All these empires. Well, they're going to fight it out. So that's a long-term cause. Very good. Supposedly. Any other long-term causes? Let me show you 4. Number 1 is a series of circles. This represents the secret alliance system that existed in Europe. You see, I told you that a Serbian assassinated the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, the heir to the throne. Little Serbia. Serbia is not a world power. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, right? Somebody in your country assassinated our country's next leader. We declare war on you. But Serbia had a big friend, Russia. Let me introduce you to my big friend, Russia. Russia then declares war on Austria-Hungary. But Austria-Hungary had a big friend, Germany. Germany then declared war on Russia. But Russia had a big friend, France. And now I know what some of you are thinking, like, France? Like, you be on their side, France. But yes, France was considered a global power.
This was before all this bad stuff happened.
Yes?
Well, they still lose it.
So France declares war on Germany.
You don't take a look at history before you say something like that.
Oh,
Roasted.
Germany and, oh, you guys, you almost made it. Germany and Austria-Hungary are in the middle of a two-front war, right? So Germany decides to do something kind of sneaky. Germany decides to attack France by going through Belgium. Okay, right? If I want to attack her face, so she protects her face with her hands, what I do is come around, boom, right? And by doing so, I just invaded Belgium. Belgium had a secret friend, Britain. When Germany invaded Belgium, Britain joined the fray.
Then you could say any of the countries was the United Kingdom secret friend.
Possibly, yes.
They just didn't like it that Germany was invading.
Oh, absolutely. The point here is these was all secret. Russia did not know. Germany did not know. Serbia did not know. Had they known, had it been public knowledge, maybe Austria-Hungary might not have declared war on Serbia had they known that Serbia had a big friend and war could have been prevented. But it was all secret. Okay. Argument number 2 is extreme nationalism. There is a difference between nationalism and patriotism. There's nothing wrong with patriotism. You love your country. I love my country. That's patriotism. Nationalism is on another level. It is nationalism that Hitler would really, really jump upon in Germany. Nationalism is more than patriotism. Nationalism is not only do I love my country, but that means I hate your country. Hitler would talk about blood and soil. Blood and soil, right? Attachment to the land.
Did anyone claim to be on like both sides at the start of the war?
Italy sort of, Italy was like, we'll join this up. Right at the end. Okay. Empires, you already said it. So they're fighting over parts of Asia, parts of the Middle East, parts of Africa. This is a European war, but it's fought with global ramifications. That's why it's called World War I. Although at the time they obviously did not call it World War I. That would imply that they know another war is coming later, right? They just call it the big war, the great war, right? The biggie. And then finally, the 4th is an arms race. The Germans invented a new type of naval vessel. I'm sure we know. the U-boat, right? There had been underwater boats. The American Navy used an underwater boat. It was hand-powered, right? Just picture 4 guys standing in a line with a piece of metal that goes like this, and they do it, and it would turn the propeller, and they would run into the British boat with a wooden attachment at the front with some explosives. And the piece of wood was supposed to break off, and then they back up, which would suck if it didn't break off. Damn it, right? The Germans had really taken it to another level, right? Submarines, very effective. Well, for every German submarine built, the British built another naval vessel, surface vessel. Well, then the Germans would build more submarines. So the British would build more naval vessels. This is called an arms race. An arms race is where you have more than you need to defend your nation. Later on in this class, we'll study the Cold War, and one of the things that happened during the Cold War was we kept building more nuclear missiles, so the Soviets built more nuclear missiles. More than enough to destroy every human on Earth many, many times over. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't once do, right? But nope, we needed more than the Soviets. That's what it's about. The British needed more than the Germans. The Germans needed more than the British. That's an arms race. Well, can you see that makes Europe a dangerous place, right? All these weapons, very dangerous. Okay, here are your long-term causes. That was the spark. They were just waiting. Something else would have happened. Had it not been for this, it would have been something else. I would argue same thing with World War II. Pearl Harbor was not a cause of World War II. It was the trigger event. We would have gotten in. I don't know that for sure, but that's the idea. That's the difference between a trigger event and a cause. Okay, questions? Let's keep rocking. This is a cool map. This shows the continent of Africa, which you can fit 3 United States in Africa. Africa's fairly large, right? You can fit about 6 Europes in here if you exclude Russia, okay? The entire African continent was controlled by one European country or another, except if you're dark blue. There were 2 dark blues. Do you see them? Ethiopia. That's where that jet just crashed yesterday. Are any of you aware a jet plane crashed? An American-made jet plane. 160 people on board, 737 crashed in Ethiopia, and I believe Boeing, maker of the plane, has suspended all flights of that plane because it's like the second one in a month, same plane. So just sort of perspective here. Okay, they're independent. And then Liberia, a nation founded by freed American slaves in the 1820s who crossed the Atlantic going the other way and settled Liberia. And I think I've told, if you were in sociology, I think I've told you this, that the descendants of those people are American Africans in Liberia today. They're referred to as American Africans, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, otherwise, the entire African continent is controlled by Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Britain. Well, they're competing with each other. Okay? So here we go. They're off fighting. And easily the bloodiest war in world history, and it held that record for about 20 years.
Are you talking straight numbers or population?
Straight numbers, yeah. And it is because of the escalation in technology. The machine gun had been invented. In fact, it was invented during the American Civil War. But the Europeans, when the Americans were fighting the American Civil War, the Europeans sent generals over to watch. And one of them like, wow, check out that machine gun. That's cool, right? Other technologies that existed that were ahead of strategy. Listen, the technology was ahead of the strategy. The technology was ahead of the strategy. Very good. Okay, so they fought using trenches during World War I. Well, you got to get your enemy out of the trench. So throw gas. Gas is heavy. It sinks. It goes to the lowest level, which is the trench. Then everybody runs out of the trench and then mow them down with your machine gun. See, it was a two-part strategy. Get them out of the trench, then mow them down with your machine gun. Okay. It was ahead of the technology. They still charged the fields in World War I, right? The general or the sergeant would say charge, and they'd get up out of their trench and run right at the Germans who had a machine gun, right? You don't fight that way anymore. The way that you fought in the American Civil War by World War I was stupid. You don't fight that way anymore. You should do things like hide. Okay. But we were not in it yet. We were not in it yet, okay? So we are neutral. Obviously, we joined in World War I. The question is why, though? Why did we join World War I? Okay? Does anyone know what we're looking at here? What is this? Yeah, okay, you're right. It's Great Britain. What's the shaded area? It's a good guess. It's wrong.
Oh, that's a good guess.
German blockade against German.
That's another good guess. I mean, pretty close.
Is that an area?
In essence, you're right. So think about it. The Germans have submarines. What is the point of a submarine? You're to sink, right? A submarine does not approach a vessel like surrender, because the people on the boat would be like, hey, look, a submarine. And the Germans would be like, damn it, right? We just got seen. That's a terrible sentence, but that's the idea. You are looking at the area that the Germans warned. Hey, any boat in that area, we're sinking you. We're not warning you. We are simply sinking you. You've been warned. The Lusitania was a cruise ship. What a lovely time to go on the Love Boat, right? During World War I, the Lusitania, which, by the way, was made by a company, the White Line. In its history, the White Line made 3 boats. One was called the Titanic. One was called the Lusitania. And then they had a third one. You know, if it were baseball. Okay. 1 for 3.
Oh.
That's 333 banners. All right. The Lusitania, which was built in Britain, those people went on a cruise ship and the Germans sank it. They sank a cruise ship. Why? Maybe you're right. I mean, the Germans did say, look, you're the dummies who went on a cruise. What is wrong with you? The Germans. It's a cruise ship, right? It's filled with vacationers, right?
American vacationers.
There were some Americans on it. You're absolutely right. Would the British ever be sneaky enough to try and transport weapons on a cruise ship?
Genius.
That's what the Germans said. The Germans said the reason we sank it is because we know there are weapons on board. And of course, the British said there are no weapons on board. By the way, we now know, looking back now, there were weapons on board. Yes, there were. Pretty sneaky. The Germans later on during World War II, are you aware that trains carried prisoners of war during World War II? Well, the way that you told planes up above, don't bomb this train, it's filled with your prisoners, is to paint a red cross on the top. American pilots would fly over and say, oh, wait, that's probably full of American POWs. Let's not sink it. Guess what the Germans did? Yeah, they put red crosses on everything. They didn't put them on the trains with the American POWs. They put them on the trains with the German soldiers. Both sides cheat. It happens in war. The British cheated. The Germans sank it. But the Germans' mistake was having the audacity to sink a boat with Americans on board. You sank a boat with Americans on board. Big mistake. Okay, remember, the Americans are neutral. They're not supporting either side. But the Germans just killed a bunch of Americans. Not good for you, Germany. I'm trying to point out to you why it is that the U.S. came and joined the side they joined. Well, one is the Germans cheated. Right? They were violating rules of warfare. One of the rules of warfare is you have to give your enemy the chance to surrender. You have to. Submarines don't work that way. You're cheating. Second is you killed Americans. Third is economic. We traded a whole lot more with Britain than Germany. Sorry, Germany. We don't trade as much with you. Is economics a reason for going to war? Uh-huh. It sure is. Absolutely is. I've already mentioned the sub-warfare. The president at the time was Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, as you will learn, was a special guy. At least that's the way he thought of himself. He's a special guy. Do you remember during the American Civil War when we studied the proclamation that Lincoln issued? What was that thing called again? Emancipation Proclamation. What did it say?
Not a speech.
It wasn't a speech. That's true.
It did not free
All the
slaves.
slaves in the territory.
Would now be free, right? It was an executive order, and it captured more land than the Union Army did. A piece of paper captured more land than the Union Army because a bunch of people surrendered. Same thing here. Same thing. Woodrow Wilson, after the Lusitania was sunk, basically said to Germany, Germany, if you do not stop using your submarines, we're in. And you know what Germany did? They stopped using their submarines. They did.
Yeah, but then they did the telegram.
Yes. But think about, let's get in Woodrow Wilson's head. By this time, thousands of British had died. Thousands of French, thousands of Russians. Couldn't stop the Germans. And I stopped them by telling them to stop. I must be a pretty special guy. He did. He saw himself as very, very important in world history. This will matter later. Okay, his view of himself as knowing the answer will become important. This is the newspaper headline from the New York Times: the Lusitania sunk by the Germans. Not in yet, but we did tell the Germans stop using your submarines, and they did. They stopped for a while. Questions here?
Who's Froman and Vanderbilt? Is that more ships?
Where are you looking? Oh, Captain Turner say Froman and Vanderbilt missing. Vanderbilt. That's Vanderbilt. As in, he is. Do you know who Anderson Cooper is? Mm-hmm. Anderson Cooper is a reporter for CNN. That's his grandfather. He is the founder of Vanderbilt University. That's him. Vanderbilt. Really rich guy. So who was on the Titanic? Really, really rich guy. Getty. John Paul Getty was on the Titanic. Died. But stop using your submarines or we're in. No, I mean, it was it was called the Wilson Ultimatum. Yeah. Okay, just a good map of Europe. Notice that they're all empires. It's the German Empire, which tells you that the Germans not only ruled over Germans, but non-Germans who did not want to be under the rule of Germans. The Austro-Hungarian Empire. Look, there's Serbia. Not part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Bosnia is right there. That tells you that there were people under Austro-Hungarian rule who did not want to be under Austro-Hungarian rule. I'm telling you this for a reason. That when the U.S. joined, were we joining to protect our empire? Nope. We were joining because the Germans were cheating. That's noble. Do you understand that here's the point. The Europeans were fighting for selfish reasons. The French wanted their empire, and the Germans wanted their empire, and the Russians wanted their empire. We're fighting because the Germans cheated. We're better than them. They're petty. We're fighting a crusade. They're fighting a war of conquest. We're fighting a crusade. You know what I mean? A noble war. Think about the American Civil War. When we were fighting to stop the South from seceding? When we were fighting to end slavery? Americans are really good at fighting noble wars. Where we struggle is when the cause becomes ambiguous. Wait till we get to the Vietnam War. And soldiers were saying, why are we dying? And no one knew the answer. And look at the result. When the answer to why are we fighting is clear, America wins. That's, by the way, an example of contextualization, the big idea. All right, let's keep looking at this because it's fascinating. German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire. Look where they are. As in, look what's to their right and to their left. Stand up there. Right there. I am Germany, and my enemy is France. You are Russia. I am fighting France, and I'm fighting France. Here I go, fighting France. You can attack me at any time. I'm fighting France.
What?
Punch
Go ahead, punch me. Oh, no. Now I have 2 enemies. And I'd still whoop you. All right, thank you, you two. You did a fine job. Do you understand? What was Germany and Austro-Hungary's disadvantage?
We're in the middle.
2-front war. The Germans had to go, all right, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1s go that way, 2s that way. 2-front war. Truly a disadvantage. 2-front war. Italy was neutral until they finally joined the Allies right at the end. Any questions here before we keep going? Again, we need to cover a bit here, so I got to keep going.
Keep going, Potter.
I know that. Why'd we get in? We did join. We joined on the side of the blue team. Well, purple team. Dark purple team. This team. Why? Jack, you started it. What were you talking about before? You said the U.S. joined because, and you said some.
The secret telegram.
Very good. Can you expound?
Oh, so the Germany didn't like America because they told them to stop doing submarines. So they sent Mexico a telegram, the Zimmerman telegram, saying, "Hey, if you invade the U.S., we'll help you." And then like that. But then the British got a hold of it somehow and gave it to the U.S. Look at this, they hate you, and then they joined.
Very good. All right. So Wilson had imposed the Wilsonian ultimatum. Germany obeyed it, but was resentful. And so now we have to be careful here. So just imagine me using these rock and roll quotes while I'm talking. So the Germans sent a secret telegram to Mexico saying, hey, Mexico, remember all that land you lost to the Americans? Go attack them and we'll help you win it back. And somehow the British intercepted it and were gleeful and showing us, hey, America, look what I found. And the Americans were like, oh. Did anyone pick up the message I was trying to send as the words were coming out of my mouth? Perhaps the British faked it. I am telling you that to this day, the Germans claim they never wrote that telegram. And to this day, the British say, yeah, you did.
But they never said we.
Well, Mexico got the message from somebody, right? Perception is more important than reality. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The friend of my enemy is my enemy. Did you follow that?
Yep.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The friend of my enemy is my enemy. If the Mexicans are thinking about attacking the Americans and the Germans suggested it, then Germany is my enemy. Couple that with the resumption of submarine warfare. The Germans tried it. They started losing, so they changed their mind. Right? They stopped using the submarines. Suddenly they were losing. Enough of that. So they resumed unlimited submarine warfare. They were violating the rules of warfare. And I would argue that was the biggest cause. Cause number 3 is some bald guy. Yes. Vladimir Lenin. Who is Vladimir Lenin?
Russia.
Idealist. Oh no, revolutionary.
That's true. He led. He was the leader of Russia, which he then changed to the Soviet Union. Okay, we got to go back now. The disadvantage the Germans had, and this really became a war to fight Germany. Austria-Hungary, but it was really about defeating Germany. If you beat Germany, the Central Powers lose. In the middle of the war, Russia dropped out. They were out. The Russian Revolution occurred. The decision by Russia to even join this war was viewed by many Russians as stupid. The Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, who was related to the German Wilhelm, they were cousins. Decision to go to war against Germany was based on his desire for Russian greatness and all this stuff. Meanwhile, Russian citizens are starving. In the middle of World War I, this guy and the followers of this guy, Vladimir Lenin, the followers were called the Bolsheviks. Be careful. The Bolsheviks. Careful. Overthrew the Tsar, murdered him, murdered his wife, murdered all his kids, except Anastasia. She escaped. By the way, she didn't. And established the Soviet Union, signed a quick peace treaty with Germany, ending the war. And what the point here is, there's no longer a two-front war. They're out. The Germans can now focus on the Western Front. What's up?
We're just very confused. So what does Vladimir Lenin have to do with? Yeah, what's his role?
He overthrows the Tsar and Russia withdraws.
Because of the revolution.
Because of him, Russia went through the war.
You got it. You got it. On its own, big deal. And who cares if Russia's out? But when you take this and you put it on top, when you put it on top of this and you put it on top of that, the country that's cheating and the country that's telling Mexico to invade us might win. They might win because there's no longer a two-front war. It's not a coinkydink that the U.S. got in right around when Russia got out. That those two things happened almost simultaneously. Because Wilson concluded if we don't get in, Germany might win. Germany, the country that cheats. Germany, the country that ignores international rules about how you use your navy. Germany, the country that is secretly talking to Mexico. They might win. So the U.S. decides to join. But when the U.S. joins, Woodrow Wilson announces to the world, we're joining, and we're going to help Britain and France. But we're fighting for good reasons, noble reasons. This is the last slide, I promise. Wilson said that this could be the last major war in human history. He called it the war to end all wars. He was wrong. He was wrong. Yeah. But what Wilson did was we got to go back and why he's here. What he did was he looked at the causes of World War I. And he said, if we could just end these things, wars won't happen anymore. Let's say no more secret alliances. Let's say no more extreme nationalism. Easy thing to say. Let's say no more empires. Oh, the British and the French didn't like that too much. How about people ruling themselves? That this was a war about democracy. And when Wilson told his British and French friends, they were like, great, super. Will you just hurry up and join? What I'm telling you is that when Wilson did his talking, the British and the French were like, yeah. Just send your men over. Because they believed that this is impossible. Limit weapons. Let's make this a war to end weaponry over weaponizing. Okay? He came up with 14 14 suggestions. I will show you 5. He said, if the U.S. wins, if the U.S. and the French and the British win, we will eliminate secret alliances. No more secret treaties. Everything's public. If you have a problem with a neighboring country, you will know that neighboring country has a big friend, and then maybe you won't go to war against that country. That will be international law. Number 2, no more controlling any parts of water with your submarines. Water is not owned by anybody. And when I'm talking about water, I'm talking about oceans. You know, Lake Michigan is an American lake. Okay. But I mean oceans. No more ownership of oceans. No country gets to claim any ownership of any ocean except that 2 to 10 mile extension of land. Nobody controls oceans. No more tariffs. Tariffs are a way of punitively treating other countries. If we eliminate tariffs, then tariffs are a weapon. Eliminate the weapon. Armaments are weapons. Let's limit the number of weapons you can make. Let's tell Japan's still a thing, you can only have this many aircraft carriers. Let's tell Germany, you can only have this many submarines. Let's tell Britain, you can only have this many surface vessels. Remember now, this is simply as goals. Doesn't mean this happened. Okay. Self-rule. This is a big one. You know who should rule India? India. Britain didn't like that very much. Self-rule. Or it says here, adjustment of colonial claims. Let's look at all the claims that all these European nations have. Let's look at them. Let's encourage self-rule, which is hypocritical because remember who ruled the Philippines? We did. Oh, I guess 6. Finally, let's have a place where nations can talk instead of fight, called the League of Nations, where you can talk instead of fight. If this were the League of Nations, each one of you would be the representative of your nation. And let's say that this nation, let's just say that this is Japan, and let's say Japan was being... If Japan was being naughty, the rest of the League of Nations would say to Japan, either you change or we will go to war against you. The world against Japan or the world against Germany. That would be the idea of the League of Nations. That the League, this is your last note, add it, that the League would have war powers. The ability to go to war. The League would have ability to go to war. If you were a member of the League, you would have to commit soldiers to the League's. That's it. Thank you. That was a lot. But go take the ACT, go kick butt, go take the work keys, go kick butt. I'll see you Thursday. Finish the paper, yes.
This is good.
All right.